In the 1960s, psychologist John Money conducted an experiment on a boy named David Reimer. David was born a biological male, but due to a botched circumcision, his parents sought out John Money for advice on how they might raise David. Dr. Money convinced David's parents to raise him as a girl, arguing that gender was primarily a social construct, that David would adapt to the female gender identity. David underwent multiple procedures and hormone treatments and was forced to live as a girl named Brenda. However, the experiment failed, and Brenda struggled with gender dysphoria, depression, and isolation. When Brenda found out about the experiment at the age of 14, he chose to transition back to being a male and took on the name David. Sadly, the trauma from the experiment had already taken its toll on David, who struggled with severe mental health issues for the rest of his life. In 2004, at the age of 38, it tragically ended. Money's experiment with David had a devastating impact on his life and highlights the dangers of forced gender reassignment.
Another very important character. His name was John Money.
John Money was a psychologist and professor at Johns Hopkins University. Gender ideology was his brainchild, and according to Money, babies are gender neutral at birth. And ultimately, environment determines whether a person is a man or a woman. And so Money tried out his theory on two young twin boys, the Reimer twins.
They went to be circumcised, and his penis was burnt off.
John Money convinced Bruce's parents to transition him into a girl. Money also conducted sexually abusive experiments on the twins throughout their childhood. The results were a disaster. Bruce could never fully accept his female identity, chose to transition back to a boy. David spoke out about the abuse and the damage done to him by John Money.
The trauma left deep scars. His brother died of an overdose, and David committed suicide.
There was never a retraction or an apology from John Money. Instead, his ideas were adopted by mainstream psychology, and they form the basis of gender ideology today. Why don't more people know about John Money, Alfred Kinsey?
Evidently, there are forces that don't want this information out.
So what we should point out here is that this experiment couldn't possibly have gone more cataclysmically wrong than it did. Right? Not only was what Money was saying was not true in the technical scientific sense, it was an anti-truth, and he falsified the data, and it culminated in the death of two people, the demolition of a family, and the perversion of an entire culture. That's John Money's legacy. And so that excuses the profession to some degree. But by your testimony as well, all of this started to become pretty public knowledge by about the year 2000, that the Money experiment had actually gone cataclysmically wrong. And yet what we've seen on the psychological, psychiatric, and counseling front, medical as well, is a doubling down of the insistence that gender is nothing but something that's socialized and that medical transition is the appropriate move.
It's all on a spectrum.
Clapper.